Hey folks, and I am sitting here with Matt Marsala, Senior Producer at EA on G.I. Joe The Rise of Cobra for the Xbox 360. We have just been playing a little bit, we're checking it out. Matt, what kind of game is this?
This is a third-person action shooter. It's got a lot of elements of the 80s arcade games that came out a while ago, so it's a lot of fast-paced action and a lot of pattern recognition and pattern avoidance. And it's just a really fun arcade game.
Now, as far as its status as a movie game, does it follow the movie? Does it come before? We just saw the DS a little while ago, and it was set after the movie. Where is this?
Right. Well, this has a very similar story to the DS. Or I should say the DS has a very similar story to this one because this is the lead platform. But it is not a play-the-movie game. It's a game that is inspired by the film, but we're also taking a lot of inspiration and influence from the last 45 years of G.I. Joe history. So there's a lot of elements that you'll see in here that cover the toy line, the comic books, and the action figures as well. But our story picks up kind of after the film leaves off. But we've also got a lot of elements from a particular cartoon series that came out in the 80s from G.I. Joe that kind of heavily influenced this game.
All right, and so what we're seeing here are two playable characters, Heavy Duty and Kamakura, who I am not 100% familiar with. So do you want to give us an idea of who we're going to be able to play as?
Yeah, sure. There are 16 playable characters in the game, 12 of which are on the G.I. Joe side. 4 of them are Cobra bosses that you could eventually end up unlocking and playing as them. Some of the characters, just to give you an idea, they're the 5 main characters from the film. It's Ripcord, Duke, Heavy Duty, Scarlet, and Snake Eyes. Those are all represented in the game, as well as characters like Kamakura, you mentioned. Shipwreck is in here. And there's several other characters which you'll have to get the game and kind of experiment with. They're included.
Now, each of these characters, if you think back to the toy line and the cartoon, everybody was a little different. They had unique abilities. How is that going to affect how they play in the game?
Yeah, well, every character has their own specific primary weapon that is unique to their character, and then each one of them also has their own specific special action move, we're calling it. So there are characters in here like Shipwreck, for example. He's a good example. Actually. Here's Shipwreck, the new modern Shipwreck version. He's got a parrot that sits on his shoulder, and his special action, when you've earned it, his parrot will fly off his shoulder, fly over enemies, drop a bunch of parrot bombs, and fly back and land on his shoulder. So it's a special action attack that is very unique to his character, and each one of the characters in the game has something very specific to the history of their character in general. So like Snake Eyes, for example, obviously he has a katana. He does a very deadly slicing katana attack that'll knock out 3 or 4 enemies in a row when he executes it properly.
And so these almost kind of break down into classes. Do they come into play at all, maybe accessing different areas?
Yeah, of course. There are 3 different classes that the characters span. There's the heavy class, like Heavy Duty and Gung Ho. There's the commando class, like Snake Eyes and Storm Shadow even. And we have the combat class, and guys like Shipwreck and Duke will fit in the combat class. So the way the classes work is that there are differences with how the melee strikes work, what their engagement distances are, how they can bound over cover, what type of cover they can traverse. And there are also these class ability doors that are scattered throughout the world where only characters of certain classes have access to these class ability doors. And behind the doors you'll find things like giant point clusters, which the more points you earn, the more battle points you get, which is the economy of the game, which then translates to unlocking individual characters. And there are also contact files hidden in some of those class ability doors, which is the first step in your ability to unlock other characters. So they're hugely important. We also, knowing that the player can only choose 2 characters coming into the game, if they choose characters that aren't necessarily of the class that the class ability door is for in that particular level, there are also these teleporters that we built that tie into the fiction of the story itself, where the player can teleport his character out and bring in one of the characters that matches the class of the class ability door. So we're encouraging the players to really experiment with different character combinations and really just try different ones out that'll give you that access during gameplay.
Even though you guys are based on the movie, it sounds like you're trying to pull in some of the nostalgic elements that, folks who grew up with the cartoons and the toys would recognize. What else can you tell us about the nostalgia factor that you guys are trying to pack in here?
Yeah, there's, I'm a kid of the 80s. A lot of our developers are kids of the 80s as well, so we grew up watching the cartoons and playing with the action figures and reading the comic books. So we think it'd be kind of a disservice not to include a lot of those elements in the game. There's a bunch of stuff. So there's like the classic Hiss Tank, for example, is one of the enemies that you're going to go up against that everyone that has watched the cartoon and read the comic books would be expecting to have in the game, but not necessarily confident that we get it. But we, talking to Hasbro, that's one of the things we were able to get in the game. We were really passionate about it. And even in doing that, we found that like after Hasbro opened up the vault of all their content, we found some blueprints to a modern day version of the classic Hiss tank that they were cool with us taking those blueprints and realizing the digital game version of it. So this is the first time you'll see the modern Hiss tank in the game. It's never been made into a toy. They didn't make it into a toy. It's not in the film. It'll be the only place you can see it. We also have things in the game like the public service announcements that everyone remembers from the cartoon series, teaching kids things like don't play with electricity, don't light your house on fire. We've got 4 of those unlockable PSAs in the game that are kind of fun throwbacks to go and view. We've got 75 file cards that completionist gamers can find in the world, and those are file cards that give you a lot more information about individual characters or vehicles or environmental set pieces, even things that don't appear in the game or in the film that are just in the toy line. We also have this one power-up moment in the game. It's this if you go through taking out enough enemies in there, you can earn what we're calling the Yo-Jo moment in the game. It's equivalent of like the Gold Star in Mario Brothers, where you're all powerful and invincible for a short period of time, and we match that directly to the classic G.I. Joe theme song, which after you hear it a couple times, it just is stuck in your head forever, and I can't escape it. But it's this really wonderful throwback where it's so iconic and so well known by people that watched the cartoon from back then that we had to get it in the game. And we found the perfect place for it in the accelerator suits, which also ties to the film. It's one of the big power-up moments in the film too, when the G.I. Joe characters put on this accelerator suit. And actually, if you've seen the trailer, you've seen the accelerator suit can do.
All right, now it's an arcade shooter. We've seen some co-op play. Can you talk to us about the co-op modes and whether or not it's online?
Sure, it's not online. It's an offline only, 2 players playing on the couch. And we felt that was the way the game is best experienced, was 2 buddies sitting on the couch talking to each other, doing a lot of elbows into each other to kind of encourage them to play to maximize the score the best. So there's a lot of co-op elements in the game. I mentioned the Satellite Strike a little bit earlier. It's a mini game that we have that is kind of like a throwback to a 3D version of Missile Command, where 2 players have to cooperate, work together to stop wave after wave of enemy attack before they take out a Joe structure or cross a threshold onto Joe territory.
All right, and so when can we look for the game and on what platform?
So the game is coming out across all platforms. It's PS3, 360, Wii, PSP, and DS, and 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. I think that's 6 platforms. And it's all coming out in time for the movie. So the film comes out August 7th, and the game should be coming out right on or right before that time across all platforms.
All right, thank you, sir. Well, there you go. That is your look at the console version of G.I. Joe Rise of Cobra. Looks like old school fun.